Okay, we will start. All right, we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Okay. Can everybody hear me and see me? Good stuff. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome to HRM level 3. So, here we go. Okay, sorry, you show the slides now. So this is Human Resource Management, HRM for short. And this is lesson 1 in the 4-session module. HR, human resources, it's an important part of business. It really is. Sometimes there are negative connotations, hence the cartoon there from Dilbert, the evil HR director. I'm getting reports that your morale is too high. And happiness is nature's way of informing human resources that you're overpaid. Of course, that's just a joke. Right? So when we talk about human resources, we're probably talking about one of the most important aspects of any business. And that's what the function of this module is. So we're going to be looking at the following learning program. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about looking at the internal and external factors involved in human resources planning in organizations. And that's interesting, human resources planning, not just human resources management. We will, of course, define human resources management, but then we're going to focus in on planning. And therefore, we're going to talk about how an organization considers the internal and external factors when planning requirements of human resources. Which also means we can then look at how we identify the skills for employees to carry out certain job functions. And that's a really important element of this. So human resources is about fit. It's about getting the right balance between the capability that we need to deliver our strategy or achieve our goals and getting the right return out of investment in that resource. And that sounds very hard and callous in one way, but that's how the system works. We have to find a way to get balance between people who want to work and are willing to work and can add to our organization, add to our business, and to reward them appropriately so they want to continue. And that's quite an interesting balance. It's easier to consider, okay, I need a new computer system for my business, so I'm going to spend X $1,000 based on so many laptops or so many desktop machines and a printer and a network or a wireless network and some software. That's quite a finite decision. I need these things to do my business, so I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to get these elements in place. But that's it. It's a finite decision around spending. Of course, it will need some ongoing maintenance and there'll be some depreciation. But human resources are much more intangible than that because we're dealing with people. So I think it's one of the most important aspects of any business. Right? So once we look at the first stage, and the next thing we're going to do then go on is look at how organizations motivate employees. So once we bring them in, how do we motivate them? Now, this module will go hand in hand with the other module we're going to cover, which is recruitment and selection, where we'll dive deeper into that particular process. But this at the first level is human resource management, includes recruitment and selection, but it includes much more than that. So we have to look at how organizations motivate employees. We have to look at how organizations manage and measure employee performance. So those things go closely hand in hand as well. So how do we get the most out of people? How do we fix when things go wrong? How do we deal with that sort of stuff? And then the final part, of course, is how organizations cooperate with their employees. How do we get our employees to work with us and to move forward? And how do we work with them? How do we move forward with them too? So human resources are quite a complex human subject. And that's the challenge. It's humans, and we're all different. And we all experience that every day. So our outcomes from this session, from this module, should be that you've got to imagine as if you're working with an organization and it's going to have some sort of expansion, okay, from new business or whatever. And as a result, employees have grown from 10 to 20 and are expected have grown from 10 to 20 employees, and we're going to add another 10 to 15 employees over the next couple of years. So the business is in a growth phase. So in 2 years' time, if we get to 35 employees, that's 3.5 times what it was maybe last year. So the boss of this business, let's say it's a sole trader or a small limited company now, recognizes that planning for this hasn't been something the organization has done in the past, but the organization has to get better. The business has to get better at this, and therefore needs to study the subject, and you need to prepare a report accordingly. So if you were submitting the assignment and material for this module, you'd be submitting a report on the internal and external factors, first of all, to consider when planning human resource requirements. Planning human resource requirements. What capability do we need? What skills, what motivations, what commitments do we need from people? And then we need to describe the use of a skills audit to explain how we might understand what our people can currently do and what they need to be able to do in the future. And then make some suggestions about how the organization can improve and develop and build on the skills base. So human resource planning is a whole range of things. It's not just recruitment and selection. It's about getting and maintaining that ongoing balance between the skills we need versus the skills we have. And that continuously changes. So what is HRM? Human resource management. It's the activities that managers engage in to attract and retain employees and to ensure that they perform at a high level, contributing to the accomplishment of organizational goals. So it's what we do to make sure we get that fit. Okay? That's what we're looking for, fit. I need to make that bigger. I cannot make that bigger here, but anyway, that's what we're talking about, fit. we're looking for that fit, to make that balance between what we have and what we need, or what we need and what we have. So if you break it down a stage further, it's, activities that managers engage in to attract, to attract and retain employees, and then to ensure that they perform at a high level and contribute to the organizational goals. So that covers a whole range of things. It covers understanding what we have, understanding what we need now and will need in the future, understanding how we're going to attract new people and if we need new people, understanding how, if we need to let some people go, how we're going to deal with that, understanding how to train our staff, our current or our future staff, up to grow their skills base, to adjust their capability, how we're going to manage them to get the most out of them. And that sounds wrong, but it's how we're going to manage them to help them achieve the objectives we need to achieve in the best possible way so the organization achieves its objectives. And how do we put all that together? Well, I suppose one of the easiest ways to look at this is to consider a sports team, whether it's soccer or basketball or rugby. So later on this year, the Rugby World Cup will be held in Japan. Ireland will be going, as will several other countries. And there'll be teams of players who are going to the World Cup, and they'll play matches, just like the Soccer World Cup, to get out of a group stage, to get into a knockout stage. And some team is going to win the World Cup. Some country is going to win the World Cup. And they're going to do it on the basis that they win a series of matches. They're going to have injuries, and nobody's going to play all of the games. So there's going to be some sort of dynamic changes along the way. So the management of that team is got to be planning for that for the last couple of years. How are we going to play? What are our strengths? How are we going to compete in the World Cup? How are we going to bring in new players? How are we going to get the most out of the players we have? How are we going to manage injuries? How are we going to learn new skills? All of those factors illustrate what HRM in any business is going to be like. Okay? So, and I should have said before as well, of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Please raise your hand, like on your bar, or send me the private message, and I'll call on you. And again, there's absolutely no such thing as a bad question. All right, so that's what HRM is. If I approach HRM on the basis of, as to what's strategic HRM, it's really the same thing, just more on a strategic level. It's the process by which managers design the components of a HRM system so that the system will work effectively, so they'll be consistent with each other and other elements of the organization so that we can achieve our strategic goal. Okay? So strategic HRM leads to a better HRM system. But at the core of it, HRM is about getting the right fit and maintaining fit between what we need and what we have. And dealing with that as what we need changes and as what we have changes. So therefore, we might look at HRM at a bigger company level as involving these elements here. So of course there's recruitment and selection. It's recruitment and selection and introduction of new employees. And that's all about bringing in new staff. Okay? But in addition, with that, we have to do that on the basis that we've done some HR planning, because HR planning will help us determine, well, what do we need and when do we need it? In addition, we're going to have to look at how we train and develop our staff. So when we've done some sort of HR planning and we know we need to bring on some new people and we recruit them, we have to train our existing and our new workforce as well. And that may also mean that we need to talk to our labor. If we have unions, we have to talk to our labor relations people on the off chance that, maybe we have to let some people go. We have to cut some jobs because, those jobs are no longer necessary and we're not in that business anymore. And that, of course, can lead to industrial unrest. Okay? But no matter what, with everybody, we have to manage their performance. And we have to reward them accordingly. And going with all of this with HRM, of course, to the ongoing administration, as well as talent management. So training development and talent management go hand in hand. So we're developing our existing staff on the basis that we're identifying who we're going to need for the future in certain roles. So we're feeding into succession and career planning. So in a bigger organization, hopefully we have the capability to do all of that and to have a HR vision that enables all of this. In most organizations, I remember from the last session, most businesses are sole traders, are partnerships, not so many partnerships, are small limited companies. A lot of those businesses don't have the scope or capability to do this. So they're stuck looking at bringing on the right people at the right time, maybe looking at training development, maybe doing something around performance management. I suppose as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, you kind of need to be aware of these other elements because they're important too. So if we talk about having a better HR system, and let's bring forward the example we used in the last session. Let's talk about my Irish restaurant in Kuala Lumpur. So now I've got, I'm doing quite well. I'm open 7 days a week. I have, I work with the restaurant is open from 7 in the morning until midnight. I don't know what the dining hours are in KL, so I'm just making an assumption that we do breakfast shifts, we do mid-morning, we do lunch, we've got mid-afternoon slump, we've got early evening and late evening dinners, which means that we have a continuous requirement for raw material, for ingredients and supplies. We need to have staff in the kitchen, wait staff. I need somebody to be doing the accounts. I need somebody else to be doing marketing and social media work. So my business is growing, and we're opening a second restaurant and then a third restaurant maybe, right? So I need to manage my staff. So I need some sort of HR system. I'm still a small business, even though maybe I've gone from being a sole trader to being a small limited company. But I have to look after things like recruitment and selection. I have to figure out a way to attract and hire new employees who have the abilities, the skills, and the experience that will help the restaurant achieve its goals. So I need to be able to bring on new staff because in the restaurant business, of course, there is a fair amount of turnover. The pay is, it is what it is. In some cases, it'll be good. In other cases, well, it's not going to be enough for somebody maybe who's in college. They're hoping to professionalize and move up and get another job, and it's a college job while they're there. So I'm going to need to replace them over time. In addition, once I bring somebody on, I'm going to have to train them. Okay, here's how we do things, right? So hopefully my chef will be Irish, or will be able to learn Irish dishes. They're not complex, by the way. But he or she will be able to then, with their team, produce the various Irish dishes that we're going to have. And, we're going to make sure we bring on waiters and waitresses, that they're going to perform effectively. Sometimes you'll hire somebody who's got experience. Other times you bring somebody on, it's their first job. We have to make sure, they learn how to set a table effectively, how our approach to customer service and how to, managing our clientele. So we have to develop on an ongoing basis all of our employees' abilities and skills as necessitated by our business. So some of that will be changes in technology. Some of it will be competitive environment. I'd imagine, the restaurant business is a very competitive space in any city. So if we're going to be really good, we have to have good quality at the right price. We need to understand our customers. We need to have excellent customer service. In any restaurant I want to own, that's what to be key to it. Excellent customer services and the experience to get the ambience right. Which means, our wait staff are going to have an element of Irish friendliness about them. It doesn't matter where they come from. They need to learn a little bit about Ireland and about Irish cuisine, and be able to, share that, for example, in Malaysia or Indonesia or anywhere else that we can try and make a business. With that, of course, I also need to performance manage my staff. I need to, continuously work with them and say, okay, you did really well there, and you get a bonus because of that. Look, you made a mistake here. Here's how we do it, so let's not happen again. And there's nothing wrong with mistakes. Obviously, we want to minimize them, but they are learning opportunities. And if I am simply going to use every mistake as a way to give out to somebody, they're not necessarily going to learn effectively. Equally, I don't want somebody making the same mistake 2 or 3 or 4 times. If you make a mistake and we learn from it, it shouldn't happen again. Excuse me, my throat's a bit raw today. So, in performance appraisal, we have to be able to provide information about how to train our staff, how to motivate and reward our workers, which means, and because it's my restaurant, I'm not necessarily going to be there from 7 till midnight every day. I'm going to have an assistant manager. So I need to work with them to make sure they manage staff when I'm not around effectively. Of course, in my HR system, we have to deal with pay and benefits. We have to pay our high-performing employees with raises and bonuses. We've got to cover off the basic pay requirements. We have to deal with benefits such as insurances and taxes, etc. And I'm not sure what the union situation is in Malaysia, but maybe there's a waiters union or a restaurant workers union or something that we may end up having to talk to. So my HR system is about recognizing these elements and making sure that they work in sync, so that we get the best out of our HR staff, out of our team, out of our business staff. Why do we want that? So this thing down here, does anybody know why I have that there or what it refers to? 2 + 2 = 5. Well, what that's called, or as an answer to, is something called synergy. Okay? So synergy is the ability to get more out of something. So where the sum of the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. So where maybe I have 2 chefs and 2 waiters, but when they're working together and working well, it's the equivalent of having 5 staff, not 4. So if we're running a really progressive organization, and I don't care if it's a restaurant or one of the printing businesses, or it's a car dealership, or it's an accountant's office, what we're really striving for is to get that multiplier effect, to manage our staff, who are actually the most important part of our business, in such a way that we get more out of them as a combined unit than they could necessarily produce on an individual basis if we added up all the individual efforts. That's synergy. That's the real secret to high performance management. And while it's beyond the scope of this course to a certain extent, if we build an effective HR system, that's what we should be looking to try and achieve. Because management of people, like, we had this in the module last week. Managing people involves recruitment and selection, performance appraisal management, grievance and discipline, and training and development, as some of the key points. But all of those things come together to try and make sure that we do better than we have a right to do effectively. So in some ways, what we're really saying is that, like, if this was the World Cup, we have to get our team to outperform the other teams. We want our team to work as a high-performing team. And we're looking for that synergistic effect. So when we're managing our staff, yes, of course, I need to be recruiting and selecting people to get them in the right place at the right time. I need to manage their performance, need to motivate them as part of that process. If there are grievances or there are disciplinary actions need to be taken, I need to deal with those in a progressive way. In other words, in a way that's fair, that everybody understands how it's working. And of course, and I think most importantly, I have to look after training and development on an ongoing basis. So, the challenge for you for this module, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't, that should have come out in red here. That's not. That's not. That line is not visible. So what I'll do is I'll retype that. The scenario, the organization that you work with has recently won some larger. So this is what we said it was as the key piece. The business is going to expand, and we need to prepare for that. We need to recognize that human resource planning not necessarily being one of our strengths in the past, but that's something that we have to work on. Just give me 1 second till I get that wording from that piece. So what that line that you can't read says is, you are asked to report on the internal and external factors to consider when planning human resource requirements. So that's your first task. Okay, you're asked to report on the internal and external factors to consider when planning human resource requirements. So what does that mean? What are we focused on doing here? Well, we're focused on adding human resources, adding people, and human resources are people. You're asked to report on the internal and external factors to consider when planning human resource requirements. So if we're going to recruit new people, well, before we ever do that, we have to do the planning aspect. Okay, we need to figure out what we have, what we need, and to get to those answers, we may need to look at doing some sort of skills analysis of our existing staff. We need to work out, well, what's the future requirement going to be? If we're going to open a second restaurant, are there some skills that we haven't used in this restaurant going to be different over there? Or are they the same skills, just more people with more of those skills? If I'm running a different type of business, if I'm running an IT business, maybe one of the things we need to look at is we need different types of programmers. So there's skills we don't have that we need to have. So, and what's the job that needs to be done with those skills? So we need to consider these things to try and determine what our recruitment and selection needs are. So HRP, human resource planning, how many do we need, when do we need them, what do they need to be able to do, based on some sort of analysis of the work that needs to be done. That's what we're talking about. So what HR planning is, so this first part, what HR this bit here, what HR planning is then is the activities that managers engage in to forecast their current and future needs for human resources. Activities that we engage in to forecast our current and future needs. So what are the activities that we have to do it? Well, we're going to have to look at what we have. We need to look at the marketing plan or the manufacturing build plan. If we're going to be producing new machines or new equipment or new products. What does that tell us in terms of what we need in terms of staff in the factory or staff in the kitchens or whatever it's going to be? The other point about HR planning is that it must be done prior to recruitment and selection. Why on earth would we go and try to recruit people or select people without having performed some HR planning? If we don't know where we're going and what we're going to need, we shouldn't be trying to recruit. We need to be recruiting people and selecting people based on our forward-thinking plan. So therefore, we need to look at our demand forecasts. What are the numbers and qualifications of employees that the firm will need? So if I'm in an accounting business, if I run an accounting practice and we're growing because business is booming around us, well, we need more bookkeepers, we need more tax accountants, we need more tax technicians. And because of that, we're bringing in a new computer system, a new accounting system. So we're actually going to need somebody who's going to manage that system as well. So it's not just an accountant. We need an IT database person who's going to manage our client case management system. So what are the needs and qualifications of employees? What's our demand forecast? What's our demand forecast? It's what are we going to need? And then we also have to look at the supply forecasts. What's the availability and qualifications of current workers? So we're looking for the availability and qualifications of current workers and also those in the labor market. So there's three categories here. So there's the number and qualifications of employees the firm will need. There's the availability and qualifications that we will need with current work. There's the availability and qualifications of current workers and the availability and qualifications of those in the labor market who don't work for us right now, but who we may need to work for us. So that's what planning is about. So like I said, we could look and say we're expanding our business. If it's a new restaurant, I'm going to need so many tables, so many chairs. I'm going to need plates and dishes and knives and forks and glasses. I'm going to need another kitchen fit out because the kitchen's going to be here. It's going to mirror the existing one. But it's going to be obviously a second kitchen. I'm going to need some more signage. All of those things are easier to do than people because they're all discrete, tangible, blocked off elements. It's much harder for us to work out how many people, what skills, what are they going to need to learn, because people don't stand still. It's not like, somebody is a fully formed chair and that's it. They have feelings, they have ambitions, they have developments, they have challenges. And, part of the challenge is managing through all of those so we get what we need out of them as well. So that's what HR planning is about. So when we apply this then to recruiting, what are and just to go back to remind you, what we're looking to do is to look at what are the internal and external factors to consider when we're doing this planning. So when we're doing this planning, what are the internal and external factors? Well, let's look at the internal factors first of all. So if we're going to be planning our future support for our business, our future staffing component, we need to look at our existing organization. And that means we need to be clear about, well, what's our purpose? What's our objective? What are we trying to achieve? So it may well be it's a profit motive, that's fine. But maybe that profit motive is linked to revenue, and revenue is linked to different units, having more restaurants, or opening longer hours, or having more products, or providing better services, or raising prices. So what are our objectives, and how are we going to get there? And then if we know what our objectives are, that kind of tells us, well, how much operations we're going to need to do. So if we're going to grow our business significantly, we're going to need to open a second and a third restaurant. So, then we need to look at things like organizational structure. Well, how am I going to manage 3 restaurants? I can't be in 3 places at once. I can be 2 places at once, but not 3. Well, I wish. But how are we going to manage across 3 locations? If we're back to the accounting firm and we're going to hire 10 more accountants, how am I going to make sure that there's the right partner support for those? There's the right oversight of each case. Can't just bring in new people and not have proper supervision for them. So what's the organizational structure? Does it need to change? So the organizational structure for one restaurant, well, it should kind of mirror in the second restaurant and the third restaurant. But how did those elements go together in one restaurant group? So what's the organizational structure that we follow? And then, what are our existing skills and capabilities? So let's look at our staff. Let's see what we have in-house. So you know what? I'm going to need a restaurant manager and an assistant manager in each of the other 2 restaurants. Well, I've got a really good manager here, our assistant manager in this restaurant that I manage. Maybe that person is good enough now to manage one of the other restaurants. And actually, I've got a commis chef there who could step up and be a full chef in the third restaurant. So I've got to look at my existing skills and capabilities in our business and see, well, okay, if I do move somebody over, well, that creates another vacancy back here in the first restaurant. So I've got to look at that overall management element. What are our existing skills and capabilities? Where are they? And how does that affect how is that affected by our organizational structure? I may also want to look at things like productivity. So in our existing structure, actually we're getting lots out of our people. People work really hard, and that's great. Do we reward them effectively? Do we have a budget for that? So what are the internal factors that affect our HR plan, that affect our demand and our supply? Remember, it's demand and supply. So if our business expands and our organization structure has to change to match, well, then that means it's going to create more human resource requirements. So these are the internal factors that affect our planning around our HR plan and our potential recruitment. So out of this analysis, really we should know what roles we have and we will need, what outputs those roles will need to yield, and what are the current capabilities that we have, and is there a gap between the capabilities that we're going to require? So there are some of the internal factors. And then if we look at external factors, so maybe we've looked at our business and we realize, you know what, I'm going to need 2 new chefs, 4 new commis chefs. I'm going to need at least 1 new store manager or restaurant manager. I'm going to need 2 new assistant managers. I'm going to need 4 new waiters, waitresses. Okay, so now I've got an idea of some of the elements I'm going to require, but where am I going to get them? Can they be replaced by robots? Not so much. Can we find some sort of efficiencies in our ordering? Well, actually, you know what? Maybe if we went to handheld electronic, ordering devices, maybe what we might find is we can actually reduce the number of waiting staff by 1 in each restaurant by changing the process. So if we did that, that would mean, say, for example, I've got 8 waiting staff in restaurant 1, and I can lose 1. Well, actually, I don't need to let that person go. I can move them over to the next restaurant where I need to hire 6 to bring me up to the same 7, and so on. But if I'm going to do that, where am I going to get them? Where's the labor supply? Where might I advertise to get some applications for these jobs? And actually, if I'm going to need to bring some people in, is it an employees market? Is it a job seekers market? What's the competition like? Are other restaurants looking for some people as well? Are they looking to hire people too? In which case, a potential waiter or a chef or a restaurant manager can, be looking and say, well, actually, I could be in demand here. So they can play one off against the other. How do we compete? How do we get that person to choose us, choose our restaurant to come work with? So what's the level of competition in the space? In addition, what does legislation say? Does legislation say anything? Does it have an implication on what we require? So maybe if you think back to what we talked about in terms of Pestel in the last session, in the session of business environment, maybe there are legal requirements or regulatory requirements that all kitchen staff must have done health and safety or hand and hygiene training if we're going to be in the food business. And actually, that's actually a legal requirement or a regulatory requirement. Maybe we could be shut down by health and safety inspectors if we don't have a training record that shows everybody's up to date with their health and safety and their contamination training. Okay? Which also means that actually, when we go look to recruit somebody, maybe what we're looking to do is say, you know what, we want somebody who's already got those qualifications. So we can show that actually, yeah, we've recruited people. We don't have to train them. We've recruited them with the capability that we're looking for. And of course, then there's compensation. The M word, money. Are we going to be able to compensate people? Are we going to be able to meet or exceed or in some way be competitive against what the compensation capabilities are for their existing jobs or their other jobs that are available in the marketplace? How's that going to work? So, we can look at it based purely on pay. It's to do with conditions. So, we give 2 more days holidays. Right? We pay the same wage, so you get 2 more days holidays. Or we pay minimum wage plus 20%, or we pay average wage plus 1%, just 10%. So, do we have that ability to be competitive in terms of how we set compensation? So what's the compensation norm in the marketplace? And that brings us back to the challenge. So the bit that you can read. Says, describe the use of a skills audit by an employer and explain the benefits of its use. So now we've identified what the internal and external factors to consider when we're doing some human resource planning. One of the things we have to use in that is a skills audit, because if you remember, one of the key things in our HR planning is to understand, well, what do we currently have? Well, we've got a whole bunch of staff. Well, what can they do? Have we actually done a skills audit with them, or do we need to do one? So what does a skills audit mean? So a skills audit is a key piece of information for any organization. And what we're really trying to do here is work out, well, what are we good at? And what are we missing? If you think back to what I said at the start of this session, HR management is all about fit, getting the right balance between what we have and what we need, etc. So that starts with skills. So a skills audit is a key piece of information for the organization. It allows us to identify what skills and knowledge our people have. What can they do? What are they capable of doing? What do they know? Where can they add value? And this is really important to us because it's going to help us determine whether or not we can meet our goals, whether or not we can do what we said we would do. It's like capacity. If we don't have the capacity and we commit to something, we've got a problem. So we're going to have to push people, we're going to have to put people under pressure to get it done. And there's only so much of that we can do. So this is really important for us to understand what skills we have, because it helps us determine whether or not we can meet our goals. It also means if we don't know what we have, how are we going to improve? Where are we going to improve? If we don't know what we're good and we're bad at, it's like if I'm taking a road trip from A to B, if I don't know where I am on that road, it's very hard for me to work out how long it's going to take me to get there or where the next turn to take is. So that's kind of crucial as well. So it determines whether we can meet our goals, and without the information, the organization doesn't know where to improve. So, of course, if we do our skills audit and we can identify elements for improvement, then it gives us somewhere to focus on. It means that any training and development projects we undertake will be much better targeted because they're focused on skills gaps or skills opportunities that we've identified. And recruiting needs then are better defined. If we can do a skills gap, it means we've got a better idea of what we actually really need. Once we know what we really need, then we're in a much better position in terms of going out to recruit for those gaps. So a skills audit is a process, but it's also a result. It's a process that can be used to identify the skills gaps in an organization, and it will give us the ability then to identify where training might be needed and where recruitment might be needed. So the outcome of the training needs analysis identifies where training is needed. Oh, sorry. So just to expand on that definition, it's a process of assessing employee skills via questionnaire. So this is one way of doing it, right? And we're going to look at a couple of sample questionnaires in a second. Are one-to-one, and then identifying potential knowledge gaps which might affect long-term plans of the company or the growth of the individual. So it's a process of assessing skills. Now, if we're doing a skills audit, we need a base. You need like a survey template, and you need to work with that because it's the same thing we apply to different people. Now, it might change between just different roles, but it gives us a frame to work with. And by doing it regularly, by doing it periodically, we get able to assess the knowledge that exists, and we also get to look and see, well, okay, who's developing well, and who actually needs more focus to help develop careers, etc. So it becomes it's not just a one-off; it becomes a dynamic and important, regular, ongoing piece. And once you've done it the first time, the second time should be easier, because you're building on an existing piece, as long as the person is still with the organization, and as long as it's all that makes sense. So here's a couple of examples. So again, these are just lifted off of various things on the internet. So tell me about your skills. So for example, this might be something that we go through with somebody either face to face, or we give it and get them to fill it out, and then you go back over it with them. So if we were in a obviously some desktop publishing piece here. So in terms of designing materials, do you have Photoshop or Illustrator skills? And in the case of the individual here, we're talking about their common ability of skills. So what we might do is then say next there. And the next there. Okay. Right. In terms of video, Premiere Pro or After Effects, or in terms of documents, Excel, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. Well, actually, Excel is not there. Excel, we're not great on. We need to learn much more about macros and other stuff. So I might just downgrade that one. And you see what happens with building up a profile of the individual. In terms of programming, HTML, CSS, yeah, average if you like. Java, C++, average. Android, no good. I'm an Apple guy. And then Wix, yeah, very good. So with all this, we're starting to get a profile of the individual, a profile of what their capabilities are. So there's a number of skills down here, down this side here, and there's a variation scoring system. Very good, common, or needs effort. So straight away, we know if somebody's very good, that can be an added value to the business. If somebody needs effort, well, that's a training and development challenge to be addressed. As long as what their element is relevant to their job. If it's not relevant to their job, then it has a lesser urgency about it. So in this case, if we said Word is need effort, but actually the person is involved in writing many documents, how important is that? If Excel analytics was much more important, then we might say we want to move up to here. Let's go Y, next to Y. In the place we want to go to. Okay. And then if you look at the other example, skills audit, so different using a computer. Are you confident? Can you insert text and image into a video document, etc., etc.? This is much more yes, no. So there's no grading. It's just simply yes or no, yes or no. And again, this could be something that the individual fills out themselves, or they fill it out with a supervisor or a manager. Or it might be a combination that, you fill it out, and actually I also fill it out based on my observations, and we see how closely we're matched, and where there are significant gaps. Well, let's understand why those gaps are there. But there are skills audit is some sort of tool, some sort of mechanism to review and engage and to acknowledge where there's capability and good capability, or where there needs to be some sort of development. So that's what a skills audit is. So there are 5 steps when we're going to do this. I'm not going to read every word here. I'm just going to go with the headings. We need to ensure that we have management backing. So if I'm going to do this, if we're going to do this, that's the highlighter I wanted, sorry. Oops. So if we're going to do this, we need to ensure we have management backing. Okay, we need to make sure that that there's buy-in to it. It's not just something that's done willy-nilly. Partly because, and if you think back to some of the communication module, partly because we're now getting into personal information, so this could be subject to certain data protection elements. So if we're going to do some sort of skills audit, that's personal information as well. We need to make sure we manage that within the right frame, which also means it needs to be treated with seriousness. So we need to have management backing. We need to create a scope. What are we talking about? Are we talking about computer skills? Are we talking about creative design? Are we talking about stacking boxes? Are we talking about waiter service? What are we talking about? What's our scope? And what's then is our competency framework? What are the elements that we need to look at? And what's the scoring mechanism? Is it going to be yes, no? Is it going to be some sort of grading or a rated approach? Then, of course, we need to communicate with our team. We need to let them know, well, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Because, staff in general are going to be wary of this sort of thing unless there's good trust involved. So we need to say, look, this is going to help us plan for the future. It's going to help us understand where we can improve our performance by providing training and development that's needed, where it's needed, when it's needed. And it's going to help us with our business as well by enabling us to get to better performance, better operations. So we have to communicate that with our staff, and then we have to collect and analyze the data. We have to put that effort in. We have to make sure that, if we're going to do this and we put the framework in place and we've told people and we've communicated, let's do it, and then let's do the analysis. Let's do it properly. So the final stage of the challenge then for this module was around no, sorry. Of course, since I changed it to yellow, I put the wording back in yellow. So let me so we need to make reasonable suggestions for how the organization can improve, develop, and build upon the existing skills base of its employees. So now we've done an internal and external analysis. So we understand the context within which our HR planning happens. We know what the internal factors are. We know what the external factors are. We know what that means in terms of the skills we need and the capability we need and where the challenges are in recruiting that capability. We've done a skills audit, which feeds into that internal analysis. So we know what we're good at and what we're bad at. Now we have to make suggestions about how we can improve and develop our existing skills base. Okay. So our recruitment. So one of the ways of doing that is obviously recruiting people. Now, if there's compression in the marketplace in terms of where we're going to recruit people, we have two broad options: external recruiting, internal recruiting. External, of course, is seeking people from outside the business who have not worked here previously, and we're looking to recruit them. We're looking to attract their attention to make them want to work with us. So, newspaper advertising, open houses, employee referrals through the internet, to jobs boards, at trade shows, whatever. We're out there and we're saying, look, we're looking for people. Come join us. Here's what we're looking for. If you have these skills, please send us your CV, send us your application. And then, of course, is internal recruiting. And this is really where we leverage off of the skills audit. If we understand there are open positions within our business, like we talk about this second or this third restaurant, we're going to need a restaurant manager or a night manager, and I've got a good assistant manager here. It's about trying to attract people over to these new roles from inside the business. So seeking to fill open positions with current employees. It allows for lateral moves as well as promotions and gives us the basis for internal recruiting. We already know the people. We already know what they're good at. We already know what they're weak at and where they need motivation, where they need leadership. They already know our culture. They're all, if they're willing to look at a new job in our business and a step-up job in particular, they know our culture. They may like working with us, and it's a useful way of both rewarding and recognizing and enabling them to stay with us. Like, they may want to improve their career and, take on a bigger job, and if we don't have one available, they're going to go elsewhere. So that can be quite important for us, that they understand who we are and what we're about, which of course means internal advancement, promotion can serve as a big motivating factor. The other option we may look at, if we're having a difficulty around recruitment, then is it may be to look at something like outsourcing. So you know what? We can't recruit people because the competition is too intense. We can't afford the wages that are out there in certain areas, or we can't afford the long-term commitment, or it's only a short-term expansion that we're looking at. Maybe we need to look at outsourcing. Maybe we get outside suppliers and manufacturers to produce our goods or to do our services, or to send us contract workers rather than us hiring them in for new jobs, a daily rate, for example. So that outsourcing is much more flexible. It's a much more flexible option for us. And it allows us to access human capital at a lower cost. Now, I have a problem with that statement. It does allow it on a temporary basis, but we're only renting the people. The challenge is we could find somebody really good if we want to keep them. So now we're into a different ballgame. It may be possible to do that with the outsourcing arrangement and pay a finder's fee or a penalty, but if we're looking for a long-term solution, outsourcing may not be the right solution, because outsourcing is a business to us. So some of the problems with outsourcing then are around loss of control over output, and unions, of course, may be against outsourcing, which create IR issues, industrial issues for us internally in the business. The other key piece, I'm going to spend a bit more time on this the next day as well, is job analysis. No matter what we do, we're going to have to analyze the work that we do right now. So partly linked to that idea of the skills audit is looking at it from the other side. But what's the job that we actually need done? What are the metrics that we need met? What are the processes that are applied in that? What's the attitude or the creativity that needs to be brought to a situation out of that job? So with our job analysis, we have to identify the tasks and duties, etc., in such a way that we're able to design a job description or a person specification. So this is what we require. This is what we need. And that's what we're going to be using when we go to recruit and select people. So job analysis is really important. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is adding on human resources or adding on capability, adding people. And if we're talking about adding people, we have to look at recruitment and selection, possibly outsourcing. But remember, we can always look at this from the point of view, instead of adding people, we're adding capability. So maybe there's a training and development function we can do with our existing staff that can help us. Alternatively, maybe we have to look at automation and artificial intelligence. But that's another discussion to have. So key thing for us is to understand the context, the overall context, and to do our job analysis. All right, I'll leave it there for the day, unless there's any questions, and we'll pick this up the next day, next week.